oh my God, what's going to happen to me? But that's not retribution. You think, well, I'm going to suffer. Therefore, I should do something to ameliorate the offense, so I don't have to suffer. But that's not what you call, what's the word? Getting relief from the offense. You have to actually be sorry that you caused another person some difficulty. When that is actually done within the core of the heart, then the offense is released. Gopal Chapala didn't come to that stage. Of course, the Rasa Muni, somehow or other, he hadn't come to that stage yet. But he will later on. And then when the Lord Chaitanya heard the second time when he asked, he said, I can't do anything. You have to go to Srivas. Only he can help you. And then he walked away. So in both cases we see how the Lord cannot relieve, only the devotee can do that. So the devotee actually controls the Lord by his love, by his pure devotion. And so Prabhupada makes many points here in this verse that are important. There are 6 ways to offend devotees. Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains these 6 ways. We have 2 classes going on. Okay, so that's a good class. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur says there's 6 ways you can offend devotees. The most severe one is what our Rasa Muni did, was to kill a devotee. Obviously it's offensive. It doesn't need explanation. And less severe is to blaspheme a devotee. So what is blaspheme? Blaspheme means you have all good qualities and I try to find some fault in you and make that fault your character description. That's blasphemy. In other words, if one wants to say something negative about the person, they look to find something, and then they make it. So, actually, this was the initial consciousness of the Rasa Muni, but he acted even beyond that. So, blasphemy means somehow or other you look for something, and then you make that their description. So, from that, getting down from that, the next one is to become envious of the devotee. The next one down from that, becoming less severe, is to become angry with the devotee. The next one down from there is not to respect the devotee. And the least offensive is not to feel happy when you see a devotee. Hare Krishna. How about that one? Well, that happens. You can't just turn on the happy button and think, I'm going to be happy all the time when I see the devotee. But what is the antidote, or what is the counteraction for that? And Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains that when you see a devotee and you don't feel happy, immediately you pay your obeisances, and that relieves that slight, but still considered to be an offense. So these are 6 ways that we can somehow or other transgress proper Vaishnava etiquette in relationship to Vaishnava. But what is the real way, or not real way, the successful way to become free from committing Vaishnava aparadha? We might say, well, Lord Chaitanya gave the formula, Trinada Peace, Nichena, Prayori Vasa Krishna, Mani Namadadena, Kirtaniya Sadai. And that is there. That is. But then again, there's another principle, which is more glorious in the sense is when you're with devotees, always be in the mood of service. When you're with devotees, always be in the mood of how can I serve? If you develop that consciousness and always apply it in each and every circumstance, you won't commit offenses because you're always thinking how to serve. And that's actually our constitutional position, to be in that. When we try to enjoy in any situation, we are in what we say, dangerous position, because that enjoyment mentality may act in the wrong way and cause one to say something or do something that could be considered to be an offense. So this is actually the formula. Always be in the mood of service when you're in association with devotee. And then you're always in a good position to make spiritual advancement at the same time. Because we know by service, we actually gain the mercy of the Lord. So Devasa Mauli, and then Prabhupada goes on to explain this particular. You can hear it on the tape as Prabhupada describes this whole pastime in detail. Prabhupada really liked this pastime because he knew he wanted to make a point that this particular pastime illustrates what is Vaishnava Aparad and what is the nature of Krishna's love for his devotee. And what is the love of a devotee for Krishna? This pastime has so many essential points in it. And later on, of course, the Rasa Ambarish Maharaj didn't take offense. And that's the amazing thing. Haridas Thakur didn't take offense when he was beaten in 22 marketplaces. Devaki, when she was being threatened by Kamsa in the jail cell, she was always praying to the Lord. But she wasn't taking offense to against her brother. So you see, even great personalities, when they're put into difficult situations, they don't take offense. So Ambarish Maharaj, he just, maybe I did something wrong. Yeah, that was his mentality. Prabhupada explains it. He was thinking, I offended this great personality. Therefore, this is what's happening. But he didn't. But that's the nature of a Vaishnava. Always thinks they're wrong. When you have an argument with another Vaishnava, you always say, well, it's my mistake. There's the end of the argument. Yeah? You always take you can't go on. Always take the humble position, because even though you may be right, it's not so important. What's important is relationships. They're more important than being right or wrong. In some cases, right and wrong is important, especially when you deal with philosophical points. It's like Prabhupada was like fire. When people would speak something philosophically contrary to Vaishnava Siddhanta, he was like Nishringadev. He wouldn't tolerate that. But there was one example where one Prabhupada was given a lecture in one public place, and there were many students there. And Prabhupada was talking about first-class men. He was describing, there are 4 classes, 4th class, Sudra, Vaishya, and Brahmins are first class. And at the end of the lecture, a question came from one of the students. And he said, you think you're first class. So he said to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada remained completely quiet. And then the devotees could see it. There was a tear going down Prabhupada's cheek. And Prabhupada misspoke. He said, no, I am actually 4th class. I am servant of those who are first class. That's what he said. I mean, he could have said anything, saying, you rascal, you don't know what you're talking about. But Prabhupada, he also wanted to make a point that a devotee never thinks themselves great. Never thinks themselves, although they may be great in all sense of the understanding in their position, at the same time they never think like that. So Ambarish Maharaj was the same. He was thinking, oh my God, I offended this great personality. So when Durvasa Muni asked for forgiveness and begged forgiveness, he was begging for forgiveness because it was his life was at stake. Maharaja Ambarish said, yes. We don't really know what the actual dialogue was, but Prabhupada explains that he immediately forgave him. And then they sat down and they started having prashadam together and they were talking like friends. Yeah, so everything was gone. And Durvasa Muni was spared, and Ambarish Maharaj never felt any negativity towards Durvasa. And they actually became friends. And he says Durvasa Muni used to come and visit him again at different times just to get his association. This is a very essential and very important pastime because it really illustrates so many important points, especially how dear to the Lord are the devotees. Okay, so any questions or comments? Yes.
You also
Le micro.
Do we have a microphone?
On n'entend rien de ce que tu dis. Il faut un micro.
It depends a lot of the mood of the devotee, because we have some other example when some devotee will retaliate, like we see Draupadi or Bhima. They were on the way of taking revenge, like that.
Yeah, but not
to tolerate the offenses of some of the others.
Yeah, well, Prabhupada also talks about that. If another devotee is being offended, one should become, angry. And, of course, one should also respond in a way that not makes the situation worse. But in this case, Draupadi was for a chaste lady to be naked in assembly, Prabhupada says worse than death. She would have rather died to be in that situation, but somehow Krishna saved her. So it was a great offense by Duryodhana and Dushasana, both of them. So yeah, that's why Bhima was very angry. And his anger was righteous. That's called Krodha Bhakta. That means devotional anger in devotional service. So if one offends a devotee, one should be angry at the offender. And, of course, how you respond, of course, it says, because we are in a more like Western culture here, don't kill him because he might go to jail. But in some cases, that's the reaction that is given if the offense is severe. But not for oneself. For oneself, one doesn't respond in that way. That's the point. For others, that's a different thing. Is that understandable? Yeah. Yes, Mataji, and then behind.
So there's no microphone?
You don't have a traveling mic?
Thank you.
Is this being broadcast anywhere?
Being recorded.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's good to have a microphone.
So, offense, it can be an offense, but it can be also an abuse of authority. Years ago, I approached the Justice Ministry of ISKCON for something I considered an injustice.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, don't waste your time. Don't waste your time. The Justice Ministry is not really functioning. Whose responsibility is it? The Justice Ministry? Is it the Kshatriya? Is it the Brahmana? Why is it not working in ISKCON? Because we've seen...
You want me to manage now? I think Jayata can handle that one very well. He knows all about the management of this kind of
And also I heard that somebody said Prabhupada wanted a jail in Mayapur for the devotees who do horrible things. Is it true? I never heard
I'll give you an example of what Prabhupada said. Vishnu Jan Maharaj said to Prabhupada in New Vrindavan, they have a board of elders that when someone does something wrong in the community, they take you to that board, and then the incident is discussed and some kind of punishment or some kind of reaction is given. So Prabhupada said, yes, this is very good. We should have that in all our temples. a board of elders, senior devotees, there's something that is wrong in the community, the issue is taken to them, and then some discussion. So that will take it to, in other words, it becomes authorized, it becomes dealt with by people who are given that position, they're senior, they're, in other words, they're qualified to do that. So yeah, we should do that. But now you have to deal with it on a smaller level or on a local level. Usually complain to the temple president, and he doesn't have time to deal with it because he's so busy. Or he says, I'll write it down in my things to do list and I'll get to it later. So yeah, it's a difficult situation. So there has to be some jurisprudence. Has some kind of thing. Maybe Jayadeva can expand on this point because he deals with these things more directly. You want to try it? Can I say something in this regard? I don't want to put you on the spot, but I already did. So I'm sorry. He deals with these things all the time, so he can answer your question in a more complete way.
Thank you very much, Maharaj.
Sorry.
I'm not sure there is an exact answer to your question, but one thing is that what I see in just a few years is that devotees are trying, but it's very challenging. It's a very challenging situation because everyone involved is usually a devotee of some sort. Does that make sense? You're not hearing.
In other words, devotee with devotee.
So what devotee wants to punish another devotee? What devotee wants to do that? Really? I mean, if someone is a devotee. So if you're in a position of responsibility where you have to met out punishment to other devotees, or rectification, which I think is the word Maharaj was using, then it's not an easy thing to do exactly, is it?
Well, it's for the good of everybody then.
Yeah,
if this devotee did it once, he's going to do it again and again.
Yeah, and it does happen, for sure, but it's not necessarily a simple or easy thing to do, and so I think sometimes we also have to see in our own life what things do we just have to accept has come to me for whatever reason. Tatenu kampam susamikshimano. We also have to see sometimes that things happen to us and we have to accept no matter how much we try to get justification. Maybe it was I have to learn something from it also. But anyway, it's a big topic, Mother.
Well, we see it happen to somebody else, I'm not just concerned by myself. If I see somebody very dear to me being attacked, unjustly treated, I want to react,
Yeah.
But not in the same way. Yes, well, this one gentleman, he had his hand up. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anyway, I can speak loudly. Hare Krishna. Maharaj, Hare Krishna. It more or less answers my question, but this last point. But I heard it's not maybe in the Shastras, but that when two Brahmanas are fighting each other, normally it's better not to take sides, because by the time you get disturbed yourself, and by the time actually it's over quickly, and you are the one who remain disturbed and maybe makes offenses, and the two Brahmins or devotees, they just it's finished. So that's my question. Should we be careful about taking side? Because you said, related to the point you said that when another devotee is offended, then we should react. So we could always think, this is a fight, so I think this one is wrong, he's offending this one, so I'm going to take side.
Yeah. Well, Prabhupada gives the example of Lord Nityananda and Advaita Acharya when they were calling each other names at the house of Advaita Acharya. And it was going back and forth. But actually it was a Leela. Well, that's different than the Supreme Personality of God. But Prabhupada makes the point that when two, as he uses the word, senior devotees are disagreeing with others. He says, if you take side with one or the other, you go down. You get a reaction for that because it's something you can't really understand, and therefore it just may be a point of view from a different angle of vision. That's all. They're discussing something and they're disagreeing. Both are right, but both have different angles of vision on the same point. So that's usually what happens when when senior devotees get involved. It's seeing the same situation from different points of view. So it means both are right. But it's just an angle of vision. So yeah, be careful. Better just to not take sides or even have an opinion. Because you don't know. If you want to learn more, you may approach them and ask them and see what they say and see, so you get some understanding. But to make a judgment without inquiring or having more knowledge about it, you're gonna make a mistake. Yeah.
I was just thinking on this point, there's also now within, can you not hear me? I was just thinking also on this point, now within ISKCON we have ISKCON Resolve. Have you heard of ISKCON Resolve?
No.
So this is another possible process of using mediation. Though that it doesn't, you can try to get two people in the room with someone who can help to mediate the situation between them. And also Brajbihari Prabhu has started this ombuds, that he's trying to make sure that in every yatra there are ombudsmen who are neutral persons that we can go to if there's some disagreement, and not that everything has to be escalated up to the executive committee or because there's always going to be disagreements. What is that in the verse?
Well, Prabhupada said where there's two people, there's two opinions.
That's right, yeah. And then the Pracheta's pastime, Prabhupada text 438, Prabhupada, says that Vishnu is pleased when we cooperate together, but even in a Krishna consciousness society, there will be different opinions, but we should see them as spiritual.
Right.
So
yeah, that's a verse, that's the purport in Bhagavatam. And that the differences of opinion may be due to two things. Well, disagreements may be due to two things. Differences of opinion and leaning towards material tendencies.
The second one, sorry?
Leaning towards material tendencies. In other words, acting in a material way. That causes immediately some kind of disagreement. It's from the Bhagavatam. It's the 4th canto, 30th chapter, verse number 8 in the purport. Prabhupada deals with that. It's about the Prachetas. And Vishnu speaks to Prachetas. He said, because of your friendly behavior amongst each other, please accept a benediction from me. And then Prabhupada expands on this. Says, even amongst the society of devotees, there appears, he says, there appears to be different disagreements. But he said, but there is no different disagreements if everyone is engaged in devotional service. Because there's where the connection is. You want to serve one way, or I want to serve another way. Or you think this service is better than this service. And then that is leaning towards material tendencies. No service is better than other. We were just discussing this. Actually, I heard it from Prabhupada. Prabhupada was saying this idea of menial service doesn't have any any value. There's no such thing as menial service. You see, service is service. We give it that oh, you're cleaning the floor in the bathroom, that's menial, and I'm out distributing books, and that's more important. But what is the consciousness? That's the difference, not so much the activity. Yeah, so there's different levels of disagreement. But one should be careful not to get involved with these lower modes such as anger and, what we say, envy or greediness. When these things enter into the consciousness, then it pollutes the relationship. So we have, that is the process of Krishna consciousness, is to check these things and eventually eliminate them. Yes. Okay, well, this gentleman had a question, and then you're next. Is that okay? Did that answer your question?
No, but take the mic.
I was speaking about the spiritual world. Gets certain contamination and MBS, so there's a downfall.
Yeah.
But before we enter in the spiritual world, we need to have certain cleanliness, against all the anarthas. So when we have already cleansed all the anarthas and we go to the spiritual world, how we fall down again? That's
Oh,
why.
come back again, second time? Well, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, after attaining to the highest destination, after attaining my Lord, one again does not come back to this material world, which is full of birth and death. Once burnt, twice shy. Which means that generally the soul falls only once. But the possibility, or not the tendency, but you can fall again. But Prabhupada said it just doesn't happen. Because you're ready, because when you go back to the spiritual world, you remember your life in the material world.
Yeah.
And you think, oh my God, I'm going to go back there. No. Yeah, it's when Prabhupada was asked by Krishna to come to the material world, he said, no, I'm not going. But then Krishna said, well, I need you to go, so. Prabhupada talks about that, how he didn't want to come to this place, but Krishna wanted him to come. So yeah, this place, once burned, you won't come again. But free will is still there. Because free will is there, the opportunity is there, but you just won't do it. You fell from grace and you experienced hell, now you're back in grace again. Why would you want to go to hell again? You might not know what hell is like. Give you an example. I give you an example of the first time falling. And this was also said by Prabhupada. People don't know this statement. It's kind of one of these statements that you don't hear much about. When Prabhupada was asked, how do we fall to the spiritual world, from the spiritual world? He said, and he used an example. Hare Krishna. He said that you're walking along the street and you see a marquee for a movie theater, and it's a horror movie. And you think, oh, if I go in, I'm going to get scared. But you go in anyway. Curiosity. So Prabhupada used that example also, that let me check out this material world, see what it's like. So that's, you might consider that also, according, that's a statement by Prabhupada, that's another way. What is this material world? And then someone will decide to go. And Krishna said, all right, but come back. He doesn't want you to go. So the idea of curiosity, and then also you see that, they say that curiosity kills the cat. That's an American cliche. What means that be careful what you're curious about, because it could lead to wrong activity. So the only curiosity is, well, what can I learn from the scriptures? That kind of curiosity is good. So yeah, that's another example. But essentially, you don't come back again once you fall. And Krishna says that. Okay. So once you get back there, remember that. Don't come again. This place is too crowded anyway. Geographical problems. Question, was another question here?
I was asking myself, someone could say the practice of spiritual life that performed over somebody had not made his character really perfect. So someone could say, is it possible that someone could say the same thing about Krishna consciousness, that practice of Krishna consciousness makes you, in fact, worse than before?
Practice of Krishna consciousness makes you worse than before?
Yeah. Oh, some...
Well, the answer is no. If you want an explanation, I could give you one, but I don't. The answer is no. Krishna consciousness is the constitutional position of eternal happiness, knowledge, and happiness and knowledge. Two highest principles of the living entity's existence to experience happiness and knowledge. And it's eternally fixed in the soul. So when you become Krishna conscious, you attain that position of eternal happiness and knowledge. So there's nothing bad about Krishna consciousness. Well, people might use a shallow way to describe things or observe things. They just like what happens. A devotee or person joins the Krishna consciousness movement and they think I'm okay, and then all their bad qualities start coming out when they start practicing. What's happening is a process of purification. By the power of devotional service, those things that you don't see about yourself are coming to the surface. And you're thinking, I'm worse than before. But it's like when you make ghee, put it on the fire, and the heat of the fire brings, you put butter on the fire, brings the impurities to the top. But if you think the impurities are actually the result, it's not. And those you just scrape away, and then you have the result, pure ghee. Same thing. Is that the soul is getting purified, and what's coming out is those things you don't need. So what do you do when you see that? You just push them aside. Say, oh yes, these bad qualities, now they're going. You don't see them and the non-devotees can't see that. And that's why when they say when we come to Krishna consciousness, we get worse. But that's initially, that's all. But it's just purification, that's all. That happens when you chant Hare Krishna, right? You're sitting there chanting Hare Krishna, and just before you start, everything's okay, and all of a sudden, you're chanting, and then all these thoughts come to your mind. What happened? Well, there's, Krishna's showing you these are the things that are there, and they're coming to the surface. Just the idea is just don't pay attention to them. Just let them go. Just push them. If you identify with them or try to evaluate them, then you give them strength and they get stronger. That's all. But no, Krishna consciousness is the pure, it's the soul's pure existence. So there's nothing negative about that. People are saying that to you?
Yes, I think during the time of ISKCON, there is maybe a atheistic person who will decry Krishna consciousness by the habits of their followers, like being maybe too fanatical or things like that.
Well, we have to be careful that we don't exhibit these bad characters. They're coming out, and now we don't use them for, activities in devotional service. But it's purifying, that's all. That's why we say, no matter what happens, don't give up Krishna consciousness. It's just a matter of time when we become pure. For some it takes so long, for some it takes maybe different time. But it's there for everyone. Prabhupada says you just stay your whole life and you're pretty much guaranteed to go back home after that. That means you're sincere. And if you're sincere, even at the time of death, if you have these, anarthas or bad qualities, then Krishna will erase them at the time of death. If you're sincere your whole life. Krishna said, oh, this devotee tried their whole life, and now they're leaving. And let me give them my mercy. He does that. Give you an example. Was one very senior devotee who was in our movement, and he had a lot of association with Prabhupada. And he also helped to open up different areas of the world for preaching. But then when Prabhupada left, he left also. And he went back to his old habits, and he was taking drugs. And he actually became really degraded again. And then he got terminal cancer. He was about to die. So then he decided to go back into the association of devotees when he was dying. And so the devotees took care of him for a while. And then the moment of death came. He was laying in his bed. And when the moment of death came, his eyes got really big. He looked towards the door and he said, Prabhupada, you've come. And that was it. He left. He saw Prabhupada in the last part of his life. Prabhupada came to take him back. Because he had done such wonderful service, he fell away, but he came back trying to again purify himself. There's a lot of mercy here. Take advantage of it. A lot of mercy. We may be struggling, and that's normal. Everyone struggles. We all struggle. But learn how to overcome these things that cause you to struggle, and that's the process of devotional service. See where you need to work on yourself, and then get rid of that. Like one of my problems, I tell jokes and people don't like them. So I still tell jokes. Lots of problems. I'm working on it. Trying to get better jokes. Yes.
I could say, for example, that take an example. Someone is coming to Krishna consciousness, practicing, and is committing offenses. And his condition could be worse than before.
If he's coming to Krishna consciousness,
He's doing offenses, big offenses.
well, yeah, he'll have to suffer for that unless he, does some prestigious, some atonement for the offense. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, this is a razor's edge. You can go down, yeah. or you can go up. If you offend, you go down. You tell the Lord. I mean, to have material desires is not a disqualification. To act on them is. When you see you have a particular material tendency, just don't act on it, that's all. And you won't go down. But when you commit offenses, then there's where it really causes you to fall in Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada said here, I think he says, therefore one should be extremely careful not to commit offenses at the lotus feet of a pure devotee. He makes that point. He uses the word extremely careful, and you just say careful. So it's like that. And as I mentioned, if we develop this mood of service wherever we are, it's unlikely we'll commit offenses. But if we're in the mood of enjoyment, or some other mood that's not service, then you can act in the wrong way, or do something that will be not appreciated. So devotee means service. It's not like I have my service and that's when I serve. When I'm not doing my service, I'm not a servant. No. It's 24/7. That's our constitutional position, to always be in the mood of service. And how you serve, that's an individual thing. But the mood is for everyone. Is that okay? Thank you. Okay. Very good questions you asked. Okay, so we don't want to take too much time. Thank you very much. And Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Bhagavatam ki jai.
His Holiness Chandra Maharaj ki
Jai.